Bandwidth for this podcast is brought to you by Ideate Software. Be sure to check out all of their great Revit applications designed to increase your productivity. We have a special edition of BIMThoughts where I got an email that says something's happening on the 8th. It looked like Revit 2021 to me, so I reached out to Harlan and Sasha, Dana, and Carl and thought we should do a BIMThoughts right away to talk about the new release of Revit. What's new, what's exciting, what we should be excited about, and what Autodesk is excited about as well. I'm going to go out on the limb here right now and say, you know what? I don't know a darn thing about what's coming out in 2021. All I know is the date. So Harlan and Sasha, thank you so much for joining Dana and Carl and myself today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Very excited to join.
All right, so let's start by telling everybody about yourself. So Sasha, define yourself.
That is a big question. So I'm Sasha Crotty. I am the Revit Product Manager responsible for the Revit Platform. That's the multidisciplinary functionality in Revit, as well as cloud services that we build out with Revit technology. So that includes Revit Cloud Work Sharing, part of BIM360 Design, and Design Automation API for Revit.
Wow. Harlan, who the heck are you?
So like Sasha, I'm a product manager on the Revit team, and I'm responsible for architecture functionality in the product.
Wow. Okay. So who wants to go first? What's new?
Well, Sasha and I didn't plan this ahead.
We didn't either, so that's okay.
So I'll go first, and then we can go in the others, because, architecture A, it starts with A, so we'll just go with that.
We'll go with architecture first, then MEP, and then structural.
Sure. So on the architecture side, there are really three pretty significant things we're adding for Revit 2021 this year, and there's also some small stuff that's going to have a big impact. But the three biggest things are really, first off is generative design in Revit, which we can talk about more. And then we have the second thing is what we like to call our enhanced realistic views, which is going to be pretty exciting for visualizing your model and seeing what's happening. And then the third thing, which is long requested and long overdue, is we now have the ability to create slanted walls.
Wow, that's a twist.
That one we expect, a lot of architects will be, like I said, they've been waiting a long time for. So
great. So let's talk about generative design.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting. This is our first version, basically, the first public release within Revit. You probably know we've had Project Refinery out for a little while in beta, and basically now we're adding generative design directly into Revit. So you're going to be able to access a number of sample studies to do things like placing furniture, for example, or massing study that's available. And it's going to allow you to pretty quickly generate a bunch of different options and validate those options, and then actually add that information directly into your Revit model. So in the case of furniture, it actually lets you place desks in the view based on the option that you select. And of course, you have the ability to create your own custom studies. So you can actually use Dynamo, you can create your own custom graph, and then run those using the generative design and Revit functionality.
Wow. So is the functionality there? Obviously, it's a first release. So it's not going to have everything we've all asked for with generative design. And I'm sure that most people really don't know what they want in generative design other than generative design. How close is it to what you thought it was going to be for a first release, or did it exceed your expectations?
I think it met expectations is
Good.
What I would say to that. Basically what we've provided is, the platform and the functionality necessary for studies to get created and for folks to be able to visualize and see kind of the results of those studies. And then we've provided a number of samples, right, that kind of help people see the power. But those are just really intended to be samples. We intend over time, to be able to add more. And like I said, the big thing was empowering everyone to really have access to create these studies and actually then start exploring the use and figuring out what they really are going to need and value from it. So
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I would add is that what we're really trying to do is we're trying to make it flexible for people to design their own solutions for what they want to do. We're not trying to define, good design or anything like that. We're really trying to make this a flexible system so that people can identify what factors of their design are important to them and really start to automate a lot of that functionality.
Now, you said empowering or something.
yeah, our typical marketing speak.
Yeah.
We're trying to let other people, the idea is to allow companies and individuals easy access.
Hmm.
You can think of it a little bit
Right.
like what we did with Dynamo Player, really, where provided a tool that lets non-programmers, computational designers, that kind of thing, be able to use this technology.
You don't need to be a Dynamo nerd in order to make this work.
Right. You could have a couple people, in your company who use Dynamo to create,
Uh-huh.
a study, and then they can share it with everybody else in the
Oh,
company
okay.
to be able to, run these, and every time they need them.
Okay, so you need Dynamo to get started in it, or you don't?
Like I said, we provide some samples that don't require
Okay.
Dynamo,
Oh, okay.
but if you want to build your own, you'll do that with Dynamo.
Oh, okay. So you need a little bit of Dynamo knowledge or somebody in your firm with Dynamo knowledge
Yeah,
to get started.
exactly. The samples are actually Dynamo scripts.
That's fair. Dana, I'm sure you have questions on this, being our resident Dynamo expert.
Well, I'm super excited to have some sample content that I can start to play with, if nothing else. And the fact that, like you're saying, that I can get some standard users to buy into this idea that maybe wouldn't have otherwise, it's pretty fantastic. I'm watching some videos, and it looks like it's kind of similar to design options in a way. Just kind of thinking from the typical Revit users that maybe not expert level is really beneficial, because once again, they're used to kind of this interface. So I'm really excited. Is this going to be patched back on any of the previous versions of Revit, or is this just going to be in Revit 2021?
Just in Revit 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, and one thing I will note, so while everyone who has Dynamo will be able to basically have the functionality to create new studies, you'll need the AEC collection to actually have the buttons in Revit active to be able to see the study and run the samples. So just a little caveat there.
Carl, you got anything?
I do. So just to clarify, so if you have just a standalone version of Revit, you won't have access to that functionality.
You won't have the buttons in the product that are like generate options and explore studies. Well, you will have the buttons, but if you click on them, it'll ask you to log in and tell you that you need a AEC collection to actually access it.
Gotcha.
But you can still, even with that, you can still launch Dynamo and create the studies basically yourself through Dynamo. You just
Gotcha.
won't have the in Revit experience, basically.
Fair enough. Which leads to the next question. We did a Dynamaniacs of Calgary session a couple weeks ago with Sol, and we were talking about the latest and greatest of Dynamo, and he alluded to the fact that when 2021 comes out, that it'll be delivered with Dynamo 2.5. Is that what we're seeing?
Yes, that is correct. Yep, we'll have the latest version of Dynamo available with Revit.
Looks like some new nodes as well, which is super exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. A bunch of new nodes. And then the cool thing about Dynamo 2.5, right, is the fact that it actually tells you what's in your package and tracks those dependencies. You don't have to go back and do all of that work manually. So a lot easier to get up and running.
That's great.
Anything you can speak to the new nodes and maybe why those were chosen?
I can talk about that a little bit. We obviously have kind of areas where we didn't have nodes for API functionality that was available. And what we decided to do was start to tackle some of those little gaps and specifically targeting kind of platform related things. So the nodes in 2021 that are new for Revit are around elements, element creation, element selection, and things of that nature right now. And you're going to continue to see us kind of looking at the platform side of things and filling in some of the things that the Revit API can do. But
as you guys make changes to elements with versions, you open them up more to the API, correct? So it looks like a lot of the changes, or I should say the new nodes, are around walls, which is a big change in 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a key part of our development process is as we work on things, we open up the API for them. We also do just API related, enhancements and projects as well that Sasha can talk all about. But yeah, that's a big part of it. And with Slanted Walls, we obviously had the opportunity to come back and improve the API as well as we did that work. So
cool.
So speaking on Slanted Walls, anything you want to talk to in reference to that, just in general?
Well, I mean, obviously it's been a long-standing request, and what we did basically is added a new parameter at the instance for every wall that allows you to select whether it's an angled slanted wall or a normal vertical wall, and that allows
Similar
you to drive
to
it with
column, let's say.
Yeah, and it has a parameter that you can change the angle. We also added like a special grip when you've changed the orientation to be angled that allows you to drag the angle and the height of that wall basically around in 3D anywhere that you want, so you can place it the way it works. And it basically is a single angle driver across the board. It doesn't do like double slanted yet or anything. It's just a single slant. One thing about it is we spent a lot of time making sure everything else kind of worked with the slanted wall. So for instance, anything that you host now to a wall or an insert like a window or a door when you add it to a slanted wall, you'll have the option in the properties to change that element to either be vertical or actually follow the face of the slanted wall as well. So you don't have to change any of your content. You can basically just use existing families that you already have and then orient them correctly to that wall face, so you can easily change a bunch of windows all at once, for example, and all have them follow the slant and not have to mess around with anything.
So that would be a new parameter within the family.
Yeah, it's an instance parameter that we've added to basically anything that's wall hosted, so that you can align its orientation correctly or however you need it to be.
Awesome. And it looks like here, in previous versions, I should say, you had the ability to assign walls to mass faces, but it looks like maybe there's additional functionality with that tool.
We didn't really. I mean, you're basically going to have the same kind of like orient to face type functionality, but we didn't really touch too much depth the mass creation or mass editing, or wall by face tools. One of our goals here was to make it so that you don't have to use wall by face,
right, or create a mass in order to create that slant, right?
Exactly. You shouldn't have to do that. And in fact, the new Slanted Walls works for curtain walls, as an example. It's so now you can apply a curtain wall and have it slant as well, and so you don't have to mess around with using a mask for that either. And a big part of it was around like joining and trimming as well.
Right. It looks like the join status is something that you can automatically do, which is really nice, which is once again kind of tied to some of those Dynamo nodes that we see, some of the join and unjoin commands.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome.
I think one other thing to mention is better window hosting. So you can actually get, it's much easier to post a window in a slanted wall and things like that, which is quite a challenge.
I can understand how making slanted walls is a big technical challenge, because you can make a wall slanted, but a wall is like a fundamental part of your building. Everything is connected to it. You've got your columns and your doors and your windows and all that other stuff. So I can completely understand why everyone is so excited at Autodesk about this feature. It was a big deal to make that work.
Especially, and one question I would have with this is some of the volume computations that you have along with this.
Right.
That even with the mask creations and different things like that, or in place families, whatever hack you did to create those interesting wall geometries, you still had the volume computations were not necessarily recognizing that geometry. Still an issue in 2021?
Well, we didn't really make any fundamental changes to, the experience of how you create rooms or spaces or volumes within Revit. And so, like, what you're going to see is just that the calculations should be accurate. They should work the way you would have normally kind of expected them to work with walls. But we didn't fundamentally kind of change any behaviors, to try to change how those things get calculated or give you more choice. But
enhance realistic views. Tell me about that.
So this is something we've been looking at for a while now as well. Our realistic views in Revit were kind of ugly for a long time. They weren't as useful, and it was hard to do actual real work in them before. So we spent some time, and we've greatly improved the performance of working in these realistic views, which is probably the biggest thing. It's almost like a 10x performance improvement when you're in realistic, navigating, working on the model. If you have a lot of artificial lights, the scenes don't slow down. They react, they're fast and snappy across the board. And then just the visual quality as well. So we added what's called global illumination to the realistic views, which gives you much better reflections, lighting, shadows, and the material quality gets improved as well. So you're gonna actually, you can actually see glass has a little bit of a reflection to it. When you adjust the time of day and sun, you get a much better kind of visual impact with the view.
It looks like Autodesk Live was retired just a few days ago. Is that something that's kind of tied to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Autodesk Live is now, the service is shut down, no longer available. And so, over the last year, we've been working in Revit in particular to kind of give that same level of functionality a little bit to Revit. So we added fly mode to help improve navigation in our 2020 point releases. And now this new enhanced realistic view is going to makes working in the view much more immersive and much more realistic than ever before.
Exciting stuff, especially since it's just becoming such a standard way of how we work day to day, regardless of your discipline or what process of the project you're jumping in on. We're really seeing people wanting to visualize their Revit models in this way. Pretty fantastic. One thing that I'm excited about, being the BIM chick in my office, is it looks like you guys are helping with some of the missing element issues in 2021. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure a lot of our customers have experienced issues with missing elements, and that had to do with essentially elements that kind of lost their ownership or the appropriate work set. And what happens is then when you would save to central, those elements would be lost from the model and no longer present. So what we've done is we actually spent quite a bit of time this year making improvements to make sure that we try to identify that condition before it ever happens. And we've also instrumented some background collection about what kind of objects are being lost so that we can go back and actually fix the original objects in the code. So we basically added the capability to prevent the data from being lost, but we also want to fix the original conditions that were triggering the issue. And that was really hard without that kind of instrumentation previously.
That's super exciting. Definitely one thing I will look forward to not getting emails about.
Yeah, one thing I'll add that's a little bit related, well, not so much to missing elements, but just a thing that you're going to notice if you use MEP at all. We've made a lot of improvements around how MEP work sharing functions, and specifically how elements get checked out and borrowed, so that you have a lot less conflicts basically when you're working with ducts or pipes. And before, like, a lot of people would get circular, basically, checkout errors, like someone else has this element checked out, you need to check it out, that kind of thing. So hopefully we're going to see a big reduction in those types of issues happening with MEP. That does involve some behavior changes of how things kind of worked, but it definitely should bring it more in line with how the rest of Revit worked. So like architecture functionality, like walls or things like that, but also just making it a lot more stable and easier to work with MEP across the board.
So it looks like there's an indirect versus direct kind of checkout process of elements, which is really interesting. So if let's say that I change a type property or parameter, I won't necessarily own that family. Is that kind of, am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I'll give you an example of kind of what we did before. With MEP, if you had like an entire duct run and you modified one segment of the duct in the model, it would actually check out the entire run. You could kind of look at it similar to like if you had a wall in Revit and you tried to move a wall, Revit would just check out that individual wall or borrow that individual element. and then it would still be joined to all the other walls, so those joints would have to move. But Revit wouldn't check out those walls. So now MEP used to kind of do it totally different. It would check out everything in the string. Now it will only check out that individual element, basically, that you're moving and adapting, and then it'll kind of respect what happened instead of checking out everything in that string. Another example would be like basically when they infilled pipes. If you had a fitting in the middle of a pipe segment and you deleted that pipe, or that fitting, I should say, it would infill that where that fitting was, where that valve was. It would try to join those two pipes together and infill it. That caused all these elements to get checked out. It caused all the pipes on either side basically to all get checked out. So now instead, basically Revit just deletes the fitting, and it won't like auto heal, I think is the right term, those two things back together again, and kind of so you don't have to check out all that.
Which is, it looks like there's a new, when you sync to central, a new pop-up that allows you to disconnect when you're receiving a work sharing error when syncing.
Yeah, exactly. What was happening is there was kind of a cyclical dependency, and this allows you to actually break that cycle if you encounter that kind of condition. And that means that you can actually keep going without being stuck and blocked by multiple users who are in conflict with each other.
Awesome. That's definitely, I'm sure, going to cause a lot less issues in terms of work sharing, which of course we all do.
Yep. I think that was one of the challenges where people encountered a lot of kind of work blockage, where they weren't able to get their work done and potentially lost work. So yeah, hopefully this means that experience is greatly improved.
What else is new in MEP?
I'll summarize because I'm not the MEP, or me and Sasha both aren't MEP experts by any means, but we'll summarize in a way. So I mentioned the work sharing improvements, already. That's a big thing overall. The other really, I think, important thing that we're working on is electrical enhancements. And in particular, there's electrical enhancements around what we call globalization. So there are improvements to make it easier to use Revit for electrical workflows in other countries, basically, or to meet country-specific standards and requirements. There's a number of things in that area, from things around panel schedules in particular, that are just going to make it easier to be able to, like I said, work and meet the standard that you have in a particular area or region. So like circuit naming, for example, is another one where we provided some new settings for customization of how you name circuits, different kind of circuit identifiers and devices, having that be updated within the panel schedule itself, adding new templates for families, and like a UK project template, so that we can meet those standards. Things for like France. We added single phase. I'm just gonna read this all out. Single phase L and N panel boards. Where so previously we only supported what was called 3 hot conductors or 2 hot conductors. We added the ability to support 1 hot conductor. And that's, for Europe in particular, that's valuable.
I'm sure that's a hot feature.
I'm pretty excited about this. It definitely looked like there was some limitations with the API in terms of circuiting and assigning spares and naming descriptions and different things like that in terms of panel schedules and different electrical elements. So I'm really excited to start to test out some of these things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Another thing we did for MEP is you may have seen a couple years ago, we released the P&ID modeler, which was a thing that connected to Plant 3D and let you kind of see schematics and then be able to model from them. We've actually connected that now to BIM 360. So it used to use BIM 360 Team. Now it actually can use BIM 360 Docs and BIM 360 Design. So you can store all your data in one place, which is pretty exciting as well. So make sure all the project information can be stored in BIM 360 and actually usable.
The schedule enhancements are pretty exciting. One thing that I have always gotten a request for from users was the ability to shade a single cell with any of your schedule enhancements. Do you guys see that in the future or with any of the 2021 abilities?
Well, right now you can override and yeah, you can override a single individual cell if you want. I think there's ability to like add a color basically to that individual cell. The big thing that we did in 2021 though is basically the alternate row shading for schedules. So now, well, in the 2020 releases, we added the ability to just shade alternate rows with like a single color, and it only applied to the schedule view. Now that actually applies to sheets as well. So, and you can assign multiple colors. You can, like, I can make the top row a certain color and then the alternate row is a different color, and you have complete control over the colors that are used as part of that shading. And when you drag and drop that view onto a sheet, the schedule will have those colors and it'll print and everything that you expect, so you can really kind of see what's going on. And then we also added the ability to highlight the current row you're working on actually in the schedule. So now it knows, you can see basically you're working in a particular row so you don't get lost.
Yeah, and that actually came out in the 2020.2 release, correct? So those are some really awesome things that we've been able to see. But I don't see the ability to shade a cell. I know that you can shade a column. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I need to do some more research.
Or maybe I'm mistaken. It could be. I thought I saw it where you can, but I could be
the
wrong.
shading button is actually completely grayed out when you have a cell selected. But maybe I am incorrect.
Could have swore you could, but I can check. We'll check.
That'd be great.
I'll throw it in the show notes with the answer. Structural. What's going on with structural these days?
So in terms of structure, we're kind of continuing down two parallel paths that we've been going on for a while. One of them is obviously enhancements to concrete, and we've been spending a lot of time making sure that rebar functionality in Revit is ready for fabrication. This is particularly important for our European customers, but I think we're starting to see more and more of this functionality being used in the US as well. And that includes things like, making it really easy to adjust hook lengths on the end of rebar, or having more out of the box kind of 3D shapes available, and enabling couplers to be created for arc rebar. So as we start to do this, we're really building out a complete set where people can go directly from a Revit model to fabrication and actually have shipping something on site for precast particularly. There's also enhancements to fabric sheet visualization, so you can start to see objects in 3D. Overall, I would say that's a big area of emphasis for us as a Revit team. We're trying to, as much as possible, make it really easy for people to work in any view and to really understand what the 3D representation looks like. On the other side, we're, in terms of steel, there are kind of two different areas that focus. One of them is making it really easy to create connections automatically. And the way we've approached that is actually in a kind of a more democratic way. We basically have said, look, we're going to create a lot of Dynamo nodes that make it really easy to automate placement of connections, because we realize a lot of the time you can just automate that functionality. And then the other thing is actually enhancing the capabilities we have around steel fabrication, and that's making it easier to model connections with specific bolts, specific anchors, specific drill patterns. And then also we now added the ability to create stiffeners as well. So we're really expanding that capability of getting all the detailed design into a steel model.
So what small feature in Revit 2021 are you really excited about that we haven't talked about yet?
Actually, I'm really excited by the fact that we now enabled the void cuts geometry parameter in families. So this basically says, allows a void to specify and be controlled at the type level whether it does or does not cut the geometry for that specific family. So right now, people have to remodel the same family over and over again, depending on whether the void is there or not. That's fixed. You don't have to model the family twice. So that, I think, is a huge productivity gain.
And that may just be worth the upgrade by itself.
Maybe.
I'm sure the slanted wall is worth the upgrade. But
I got one that's actually really small,
okay.
But I think we'll make, and I don't even know if we talk about it in some of our stuff, but it's definitely in our release notes when you check it out. But we basically now alphabetize the design option list.
Wow.
So instead of basically before it was the order in which you created your design option,
Alphabetized design options. Gigantic.
yeah. So now, yeah, you don't, you can actually find the thing you're looking for, hopefully.
Sometimes in projects they get super lengthy. It is sometimes hard to cull through everything. I do kind of have a final question for you guys. I'm sure over the last month, you guys have seen BIM 360 adoption soaring, right? I mean, I know Smith Group has just gone ham inside of BIM 360. Can you talk to how Autodesk and the Revit team is going to reprioritize functionality improvements in light of this change? Or how Revit improvements are kind of geared towards BIM 360 adoption?
That is a fantastic question. I was going to say I had one more topic, and that would be exactly aligned with this question. So, in terms of reprioritizing, the good news is we actually are not reprioritizing as a result because we have been preparing for, well, not obviously not this kind of situation that we're actually experiencing, but for growth for the last 2 or 3 years. So we've actually spent a lot of time thinking about how do we build out a more scalable service, a more resilient service, and that is really what we've been working on for the last 2.5 years that I've been a product manager in Revit Cloud Work Sharing. As a company, we're absolutely constantly monitoring what's going on and watching that growth to make sure that we are supporting it and we're keeping ahead of it. We have a lot of monitoring in place, so that's been really important that we've built out, over the last few years. Um, Other things that are worth mentioning for the Revit 2021 release, you're switching to a brand new infrastructure for Revit Cloud Work Sharing that is going to be much more scalable in the future. So that is a change that we've been working on for the last year that will be coming out for the Revit 2021 release. Older versions are still going to work on the older infrastructure. Um, and then one other thing I want to just mention that we're doing in terms of Revit Cloud Work Sharing is with Revit 2021, we will be able to support European accounts for BIM 360. So it will be possible to put 2021 projects in Europe and not just in the US. So I think that's a really, really big deal for our European customers. So I'm excited to bring that to market. But overall, as a company, this is obviously a huge area for us to be thinking about. We're so thankful that we're able to support our customers and moving to, moving to the cloud and adopting more cloud-based workflows to actually be able to work at home. We are definitely watching the growth, and if there are things that we start to see that would require projects, we will absolutely reshuffle things around to make sure that we are supporting those customers and that growth.
All right, I have one more question.
All right, Carl, you get the last question.
All right. So our friend Dan the Polar Bear Stein, every year he writes a "What's New" article for the AEC Bytes, and so he gave me a couple of pointers to ask while I had Harlan and Sasha here. Slanted Walls was one of them. I think we've covered that quite well. Another one was a new ability to link images and PDFs.
Yeah, we didn't mention that one. I mean, we had added the ability to import a PDF last year.
Correct.
Now you can link them, and they're in the Manage Links dialog, and it's not just PDFs but also images. So basically, in Manage Links, you'll have a new tab, one for images, one for PDF, that lets you link those in so that if there is a change, it needs to update, or you have a PDF that's constantly updating, it'll reflect that new PDF change, and it adds all the kind of standard link behaviors you come to expect with other things as well, reload and all that. And it actually works as well with BIM 360. So if you're using the desktop connector, you can actually link those PDFs and images from the cloud into your model as well.
I can see that being a really cool thing to add in for all of our facilities management and operation people out there to have that functionality.
Not only that, but in terms of file size, that should be pretty huge. PDFs
Yes.
and raster images, definitely we see that's like usually the first thing that when somebody's having a problem in their model, I'm like, delete those out, So that's really awesome. I'm definitely excited to see that.
And the one last thing I heard Bill getting ready to cut me off there was also mentioned that the install process is a little bit different now. It's a couple of different installs when you do it. It's not a single install. The content is separate. Sorry, I guess is a better way of saying it.
Oh yeah, the content. So content. Yeah, we've basically made some changes to how Revit installs content for this year. We've basically made content part of, well, some of the content, things like sample projects, templates, family templates, project templates are really part of Revit's installation, as well as some content. Now, and I have to add this as a caveat. So basically, some of the US content and some of the German content is available as part of the installation. And you can select those, if you don't want them or whatever. But the rest of the content is all going to be available for download. And we actually have added a button to Revit that's just called Get Autodesk Content. It's really simple. You click it, it takes you right to the web page where you can go download, any of the other missing content that you may expect. The reason we did this is really, one, to kind of improve the quality of install. And make it so that the install is actually faster overall. Because before it would have to go up to the web, it would download these cab files and extract them and basically do all this processing to get like the content that you needed. So this year we decided we're gonna kind of minimize what's needed because we recognize most companies probably install content once somewhere anyways, and they don't need it on every machine. And really just to improve the quality, make sure things don't get missed or lacking, we embedded kind of what we thought of as necessary content into the Revit installation itself.
Makes sense to me.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us today, Harlan and Sasha. It is always a treat, and it's a pleasure having you on. I know you don't have to do this, but you do. I think it's great that you join us for this to let our listeners know what's new and coming up in the new releases, and to also put a voice to the product. So it's just not like big Autodesk doing this. It's Harlan and Sasha that really care about the product and really care about what we need as a user base and trying to make it better for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Those are very nice words. We appreciate it. And I do think they absolutely ring true. We really do care about you guys. So please let us know how we can help you.
Yeah, thank you.
And everyone have a great day out there wherever you are. And we hope you guys get back to your offices real soon.